It takes a while, yeah.
Living with it, and he's very early on. So we're saying, when he gets into that panic, what's the professional opinion on how to get him out of that panic? And thinking, oh my god, I've forgotten.
So what age is Kieran?
41?
No. In the what age is his?
Yeah, his character.
Dementia? Yeah, his character.
41, I think.
41.
Yeah.
So he has what we call young onset dementia. It's not called early, it's called young onset. There are increasingly larger numbers of people who have young onset. It's estimated about 42,000 in the country, but I think it's far more. And we're not really geared up for that, because what's your assumption of someone with dementia? Who gets dementia?
Older people?
Yeah, not so. That's the first thing, isn't it? It's not necessarily. So it's very good that you're trying to get in a character to explain he's got young onset. Usually at that stage, I would say, when you say someone he's getting into a panic, what is in the storyline? What's the trigger?
So the scenario is that he's a chef,
Okay.
and he's cooking something, and he forgets a recipe, or he forgets, so like bread, he forgets what the toaster is, so he's trying to explain what it is, but he can't.
Word finding.
So he's like explaining it with his hands and like looking at his wife as if to say, help me, and then because he's realising that he's forgetting, he's then struggling with that because he's forgetting.
Mm-hmm.
So then he's panicking, saying like, what if I forget who I am, what if I forget who you are, and thinking in long term. So in a year he's forgotten what a toaster is, in 5 years what's he going to forget. So we're trying to show that like panic overall, and like how somebody, like a carer, would calm that person down, and like how they would deal with that.
So it's what we call informal. It's his wife who's living with him. It's about reassurance. Did any of you see, particularly he's a chef, quite recently on Channel 4, was it BBC, the restaurant that makes mistakes?
Makes mistakes, I
Channel
think.
4.
Yeah,
Channel 4, do try and watch it, because actually it's set in Bristol with people who have young onset, and they run a restaurant. Everything from the chef to the waiting staff to everyone.
Checkout staff, everything.
Yeah, so I think that would be a really good background thing to watch, to catch up on Channel 4.
The restaurant?
The restaurant that makes mistakes, and it was actually in Bristol, wasn't it?
Really good.
Yeah, 2-part series. I've only so far seen the first part, so I think that will give you a good background in your character development. Yeah. Would you say, Mark, someone who's first had a diagnosis, it's about reassurance,
acceptance. I mean, I work with a young man, unfortunately, who's got young onset Alzheimer's, and the first thing, because he was quite an alpha male as well, Mr. Jim, Mr. Patriarch of the family, the one that everybody went to for answers, and obviously with his memory now in decline, and it's got to that point where it's becoming sharp decline now. But originally, a lot of it was about reassurance that he could still do the same things, he was still working. I think his friends at work were covering from quite a bit, but reassurance was definitely big, because I think my experience of working with people with young onset, when they first get the diagnosis, they can almost go into a depression.
Yes. Yeah.
Because of the impact. I think because it's so synonymous with old people, they can't believe that they've got this thing, and they're not old, so why is it happening to me?
Yeah.
So yeah, reassurance and acceptance, I think, is probably the two first.
That you're doing as well as you can, and okay, so the wife would maybe say, well, let's not do the whole recipe, let's just break it down, or do a little bit, or whatever it is. People are very often at that stage in denial about the condition, and I think because of the media headlines, because of how it's depicted as it is now overtaken cancer as the condition most feared by people over 40. It is terminal, it is life-limiting, but you can live for a very long time with it. However, as Mark said, with young onset, the younger you get it, the more quickly it tends to develop. I mean, we haven't got all the clinical evidence to base it, but you talk to clinicians and people say, yeah, and as you said, the person you're supporting, it will develop more rapidly. Some of you may have seen the film or read the book Still Alice. The character in there, played by Julianne Moore, is 52, I think, and she progresses to the point of practical muteness within a year. Most people who are diagnosed, maybe in their 60s, 70s, it takes a very long time. You can live with it from 3 to 30 years.
Yeah. I mean,
But
vascular's the one that seems to stick around. isn't
Yes,
it?
it can be. Now, the thing is, if your character, he's 41, I think the symptoms he would show would be great fear, exactly as Marcus, at what's going to happen to me. Why me? Why me? This isn't fair. Dementia doesn't discriminate, actually. It can be as clever as anything. It can be 6 as 2 short facts. Mrs. Thatcher had vascular dementia.
That's why David Cameron was quite into it.
We
wasn't
believe,
he?
yes, absolutely, 2020 chat. So the other thing, now I'm going to share this with you, it is upsetting. I was doing a dementia awareness session with some volunteer groups, and someone came up to me in the break and said, a friend of mine has just been diagnosed, he's 45, he has young children, he wants to kill himself, what should I tell him? So that is kind of like, whoa, euthanasia is not legal in this country yet, but he wants to either do it or get on the first plane to Switzerland. That's very dramatic, and people will feel that.
So it's a fear of the unknown, isn't it?
It's a fear of the unknown.
How are you going to cope? I'm providing for the family.
I've got a mortgage, I've got dependents.
Terry Pratchett did a really good piece about this when he was diagnosed
Yes.
with it, about assisted suicide and the
Yes, he
thought
did.
process,
He went Terry Pratchett, the Discworld sci-fi novelist, who had a very rare form of Alzheimer's called PCA, posterior cortical atrophy, which meant his memory was not affected. That's another key thing about dementia. It's not all about memory. Okay, it's not all about memory. As we've heard with Lewy bodies, it could be the hallucinations, it can be gait, it can be all sorts of things depending on what the dementia is. There are estimated to be well over 100 types of dementia. Alzheimer's is not dementia, dementia is not Alzheimer's. Dementia is an umbrella term for lots of different syndromes. Alzheimer's happens to be the biggest. Currently it's estimated 72% of people have Alzheimer's. There are all sorts of others. We don't know yet, do we?
No.
Enough about, what we know now, in 10 years, neuroscience moves so fast.
So if you want to keep up with that, UCL, that's where I go to all the time.
University College London do
Yeah.
fantastic. There's free online resource called Future Learn, and there's a great learning package that I did last year. I think it's still available, called Dementia in the Arts. So if you're performing arts students, I recommend you have a look at that. It would be about an 8-week course, but dip into it. And what, I can talk more, come back and talk to you again about this, but what the arts can do for dementia, people living with dementia, is huge. It's not just about the physical, caring for someone, getting their meds, getting their bloods, getting nutrition. It's actually what we like to say, the psychological.
It's on the psychological,
So
yeah.
it's how do you meet a person's need still to be that person? I always say so I don't work with young onset, so the patients I see are very, very poorly, as I explained earlier, don't have much communication, but they're still a human being in front of me. And what is it I can do in that moment just to connect with you, to find the humanity? I'm a human being, you're a human being. You're not the dementia patient, you're a person who happens to have dementia. And even if it's for a few moments, and sometimes, in this case, it is a patient who just look up, do that, or just, there's a lovely thing you could, if you're doing physical theatre, I just thought of it, Leonard Cohen's Dance Me to the End of Time. Exercise I do.
Yeah, he had just redone his last album, hasn't he?
Yes, so you can see the video and it actually features older people, but there's an exercise I do with patients. It's about mirroring. So I don't know if you would want to incorporate that in your physical theatre aspect of the performance. But people will respond to it. So I can't even do the music now, but what I've done before is just sort of hold out that, just if there's, it goes like that, and you take a movement. So you can do it seated, you can do it stand, or you can do it stand. You can take it up into movement, and it can be a really. I don't know if I'm just trying to think of. I don't know your performance, but if you want to take it into dance and movement, you could. That's beautiful.
We used mirroring before. Duty used it in their physical theatre today.
Right.
Yeah.
Because now the theory behind that
Ellen Brown uses this a lot, doesn't he?
but it's really,
yeah.
if so, again, someone doesn't have words, they can respond with they pick up on body language, gesture, movement, it's all of that. And again, think back to how we developed. I always talk about this in my training, developmental psychology. How does the baby learn? It looks at its mother, usually, primary care, it copies. What we are as Homo sapiens, as a mankind, wise man supposedly, actually we're just apes, aren't we? But we're mimicking apes, we're gesturing apes. And there's no difference with a person with dementia, that we're kind of programmed to copy each other. By that we learn. The baby looking at its mother, smiling, will smile back. The person with a dementia who maybe has no language anymore can still communicate in a viable way. There's another lovely piece, John Killock's work is terrific, Playfulness and Dementia. I talk a lot about playfulness. And he says he mentioned someone, actually it's Rennie someone else, Chocolate Rain is a great book. So they were doing a collage on a care home or something like that, and there was one chap who used to come out and he just kind of stole bits of paper and then he scuttled off again. And then she noticed that he didn't have the cognitive ability to sit down and do the product, do the thing. But she started leaving bits of paper out for him to steal. And she said that became, and so they did this little kind of game between each other. So that might be something you could incorporate. That became a viable form of communication. And I struggled trying to get that over to health and social care staff all the time. Say, be playful. Struggle to get it over to family members because they see it's their dad or their mum. And I have to talk to you as I've always talked to you, but actually, your dad or your mum, because of the changes to the brain, is still a human being, but is not going to be, you can't communicate in the same way. So what we always try and say is, so going back to your character, don't get het up on what he or she used to be able to do and maybe can no longer do, because that's going to just cause them frustration, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So can you just be with dad or mum in that moment in maybe a playful way? Does this all make sense?
Yeah. I think it's going to help as well, because we've been struggling on how to find how to end up on hope and happiness.
So yeah, exactly, because it's hard. I take my hat off to everyone who works both professionally and informally with this, because it is, and you might well find, even though you've got a younger audience, that people will have a personal connection or know their gran or their nan. So you have to be careful that you're not going to send people out again of the performance just feeling terrible. Yeah. So you've got to think about, it is a kind of therapeutic containing, isn't it? So I don't know, maybe ending something with that sort of mirroring movement with the dance.
Well, we quite like it because when we watched the Henry video, we loved the thought of the fact that just the music triggered him to come back to Henry again.
Yes,
so
come back to this Oliver Sacks, the famous Norris said, he gave him back his sense of self. Mm-hmm. And whether you want to find a way of involving the audience in that, I don't know.
I'm wondering if a song would work on it.
Well, Sonia had an idea of a song and two people going towards each other and having a dance together.
That'd be lovely. Watch this video, Google it, and Leonard Cohen's Dance Me to the End of Time, because in the background, the video has a couple, an elderly couple, and then a film thing of when they were much younger. But there is a moment they're just dancing together, and that's so beautiful. I think that'd be lovely. Do you all know how to waltz? Come on, 1, 2, 3. Yes.
Roughly, yeah.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1.
Of all the classical dances, it's the easiest one to learn, believe
It's
me.
the easiest one to learn. Wouldn't that be beautiful? You've got that, and then suddenly you just get, just the two hands just holding on to each other. I think that'd be lovely.
Yeah, it would be.
And it could either be the whole don't know. The other thing I do.
Something intimate about the waltz as well. isn't
Oh,
there?
it's so beautiful, so beautiful, and I think that would be helpful. And see what music you might want. The other thing I do, if I've got a small group, I'm not sure how this would work in a performance, but it's, I use a big thick ball of wool, very brightly coloured, and we make a kind of connection. So we throw it across. So I'd say your name, and then you throw it to mark, and it would. So you have this kind of, I call it my web of connection. I do it with patients as well sometimes, and we just lift it up and then drop it down. I think connecting and communicating. If you're thinking of a theme, it's connectivity, isn't it?
Yeah.
Finding a way of connecting to that person in that moment. Is there anything else on the language? So we've talked about suffering. We don't want to say suffering. Living
I don't know.
with.
I didn't know the early onset young thing.
Yeah, no, it's young onset now. It's young onset. You said you wanted to get a kind of authenticity with carers. Or so. I'm sorry. What was it?
It was just we're trying to get all points of view across, and we're trying to because we want the three sides of it: the person living with it, and then say like a family member who's also then caring as well, and then an actual professional carer.
Right. Yeah.
So we were just
and that is called a triangle of care.
Triangle of care.
In our health and social, with our health and social care.
Well, from the someone who's looked after someone with Alzheimer's, I can help you there because I looked after my mum on that one, so I know quite a bit on that front.
It was as well because we've got we're showing like how somebody who doesn't know what it even is, and then suddenly their family member gets it, and then how they have to take on this role.
And that's probably a good way to go because a lot of people are in that boat really.
Yeah.
It's like not only the person living with its life has changed, it's also the people around.
Oh, and I think, certainly in the county, that's getting more and more of a priority in terms of how we develop our training, because informal carers, as we call them, or family members, it's such if every single family member looking after someone in this county, indeed in the country, said that's it, I can't do this anymore, the health and social care system would collapse overnight. It really would. It's so much that they give, and I think for the family member, there's all sorts of emotions mixed up, whether it's a young onset or not, because it's very often guilt. I've got to be looking after this person, but you're no longer the person I married in many ways. It's frustration. Sometimes with some of the conditions like Lewy bodies, people can become violent. Now, one of the other words we try to encourage people not to use is aggressive. So it's depending on how you use it. You have to try to separate the emotional aspect. So people will be aggressive, angry, violent, but dementia is not defined by the emotion, it's the symptoms. Any behaviour that challenging behaviour or emotional distress is
I prefer that. I really
emotional
do,
distress is what it's now called. And this is a key thing to remember, is an attempt to communicate an unmet need.
There's always a reason behind.
There's always a reason behind. That behaviour doesn't come out of nowhere. What's triggered it? It might be that all of a sudden I've looked in that reflection and I've seen something that scared me. I'm in an environment I can't make sense of, I don't understand. Someone's come up to me and I don't recognise them. I'm frightened. I'm in pain. People with dementia are very often in pain, and it's under-recognised and not given pain relief. Why? Because they can't say I'm in pain. Like, I said,
I was just looking at that polo there when you put a hat and a coat on.
oh
You
my
can
gosh!
see,
Yeah, absolutely. What could this? In fact, I said, what could this be if you had a coat on it and you saw that reflection? You could actually, this would be a good prop, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I was just looking at that and thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, if you put your scarf on that, and put my beret on, I'm going to take off because I've got a bad headache. Someone sees that, so you could be holding that, but the person with dementia sees that as someone in the corner. I'm texting, not just an hallucination. See the world through the person's eyes. That is scary for someone.
The other case of that in St Oswald was a guy who was leaving his property, and he was seeing a guy that was always there. He was always coming up at 6 o'clock on the ground floor, and they were thinking, is there someone actually coming in? And sort of like, you know, we don't know about it, so they had one of the carers stay with him that night.
Yeah.
So it was. And what it was, as it got darker, it was exactly that. There was a hat, there was a scarf, there was a coat, and he thought there was somebody stood by the front door, and that's why he wasn't going out and accessing any of the activities. So little things like that, yeah.
So actually,
I didn't know if I told you I did that in the training recently as one of the examples. So
yes, you could use that. You know, one of the characters say, no, I'm not leaving, I can't go out. And as the as the evening
is the
comes
perception
on,
with the eyes, you get macro
perception with the eyes, yes, is very much. We have a thing called sundowning syndrome, that people's behaviour changes as the afternoon wears on, so you're aware of that, and that's because the light changes triggers a response in the brain, either that you're seeing, you know, literally seeing shadows that aren't there, but also for decades maybe, you know, at the end of the day, like, you know, you've gone home, you've collected the children, you've cooked tea, you've done something different, and that's still, that memory is still there. We can still retain our long-term memories, but short-term memories, what else will tend to go. So that memory of things starting to change at the end of the day, and that's very often in care homes when you'll get people say, I'm going to go home now, I've got to go home. How do you stop that? I've got to pick the children up. You're 80. But what you've done, you've gone back in your memory to that 25-year-old.
So then what would you as a carer say to that?
You have to all say the same thing. Reassure, don't worry, Gladys, the children are being taken care of. Or the dog's being fed. I've got to get back to feed the dogs. No, it's all right. It's being taken care of. I can say that. Not, oh, don't be silly. You know, you're 80, Gladys. How old do you think your children are? You could, or you can say the children are fine, and they are fine. They're in their 40s, but you know they're fine. They're not children at school.
Through unethical life.
Yeah,
It's that terms of like past family members that they believe are still alive.
That happens a lot. So what would you say to again, we always say, what can the person process in that moment and make sense and not be frightened by? It is about a reassurance.
It's really hard not to make them relive their grief, you know. Can't
Grief is a bit.
said, you know this.
Yeah, you know that you went to the funeral, don't you remember?
And you watch that person melt down in front of you.
It's
And
almost
that
getting them
can-
to talk about that person. You know, what if they're afraid to maybe do something. You know, what would John say to you in this situation? What would John do?
Exactly.
You know,
Or you turn it into a reminiscence. Oh yes, John. Tell me, what was the music you and John used to listen to? And actually, you could then get a soundtrack of it's usually 50s.
Yeah.
Don't go back. There's a lovely website saying it's not all about Tipperary.
Yeah.
That demographic is changing. I don't know when I last used Second World War songs. So don't actually play Vera Lynn in your performance, please. So it's 50s, 60s, isn't it?
ABBA, I'm telling you,
Or
more than
it-
anything else I
ABBA.
find these days.
Yeah.
Everybody knows an ABBA song,
Partly because I've just forgotten now. I'm short-term memory. So where are we going with this? Oh yeah, drop the music. Yeah. So you could, rather than get that person to relive the bereavement. Oh, I forgot. Oh my God, he's dead. Oh. The reminiscence. Oh well, tell me about John and what is it you used to do? What music? So you can distract someone into a kind of reminiscence. Good old, let's have a cup of tea.
But it's never like, not the truth, but it's never like.
Now, yes, there's a whole big thing again. It's called ethical or therapeutic lying, or we're now being encouraged to say entering the person's reality.
Reality, yeah.
So that's a last resort. When do you go along with that? If the person is becoming increasingly distressed, where is John? He was here. And they won't be able to process, to maintain that knowledge that John is dead. then you might have to get, well, he's phoned to say he's going to be late.
Yeah.
Coming along later. Tell me about John. What did he used to do? Let's go and have a cup of tea. Care homes have used all of these techniques, don't they?
Yeah.
However, conversely, and this was a colleague who worked in the forest a while ago. She said she was saying that this woman couldn't remember that her husband had died. Actually, they said, oh, well, you know, he has died. And do you remember we went to the funeral and put flowers on? She said, oh, thank God. I thought he was off with that floozy down the street.
No way.
Because he'd always been, you know, a bit on the side.
Marriages, yeah.
And so whenever he disappeared, he was off with that floozy down the street. So actually she was really relieved. So you can kind of like, there's a bit of humour, you can bring in a bit of humour, I think.
It's knowing the funny moments, I think.
It's, yeah, it's knowing the person. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
And that's another thing we always say, you know, you have to know the person inside out. So, however, conversely, what we've also come across, isn't it, is families who said, no, you've got to tell Mum that Dad's died. And they'll sit there with her in their visiting hour and say that, yeah, you know, he's crying. They leave. We start to say for the next 20, you know, you're there for an hour, you're not there for the other 23 hours. And that poor lady is in pieces because every half hour she's saying, is he dead? He is dead. He's dead. Oh my God, you know, because they've been told by the family she needs to know the truth. It's actually the family who can't cope with that truth. They're grieving, really. So this is probably overcomplicating what you're doing, but I just want to kind of give you that background as when we reassure people or not. Yes.
So may I ask you, for how long does this person remember new information?
That's the. If they have also where we have lobes in our brain, so I mentioned the occipital, that's how the brain interprets what the eye sees. There's another lobe called our temporal lobe. Part of our memory is located in that, and if someone has those particular problems, the bit that processes short-term memory, that is damaged. So people simply cannot remember anything short-term. So it's no good you saying, what did you have for breakfast at lunchtime, you know.
They don't remember 10 minutes after they've had breakfast.
No. So short-term memory is really important.
Hippocampus and amygdala.
The hippocampus and the amygdala are the two kind of those things that are deep in our temporal lobe. The hippocampus takes on facts, names, dates. The amygdala is our emotional memory. It's kind of like our Stanislavskian bit, if you like. But it's also, the amygdala is our freeze, flight, fear response. So I always say in many ways we have a prehistoric brain still, but we live in this mad 21st century world. Our prehistoric brain, the amygdala, that tiny bit of it, the freeze, flight, fear, if there was a predator coming in there, pterodactyl flying in, we would run away, or we would freeze, play dead, or if there's a tribe, we'd fight them. Now that amygdala response is still there in all of us. With a person with dementia, it can be triggered really, really quickly. Because what is the brain trying to do? It's trying to protect the person. So I might come to you, I don't know, I might have come up like here, so you're not looking, you're there, and I'm saying, hi Gladys, we're going to go. You haven't seen me because we have this degenerative, the eyesight has gone into binoculars very often. It's not scuba mark, it's binocular. So you could do, and what's it like to try to... I'm up here, so that's a power thing. You're sat down there. You haven't even heard or seen me, and I've touched you. And what have you done?
Got the amount of incident before.
Don't go near her. She's going to flash. They'll just leave her. She's that kind of. It's my fault. I triggered your amygdala. Your amygdala went, oh my God, there's danger. There's a threat. What do I do if there's danger or a threat? So you have to make hear, see, touch if you're approaching someone. So can you hear me? Hi, Gladys. Double prompt. The hand makes the person look to the mouth. They can't. Hi Gladys, it's Kim. Come to see you today. I'm picking up on your body language. It's okay so far. Okay, I'm going to get closer. Here, see, and then if appropriate, what I need to do is get down to this. So when you're portraying this in your performance, when you're modelling the good way to approach someone, to get in their eye contact so that they can see you. So if you're in your performance, if you're approaching someone and you're having a kind of like professional interaction or something, what you don't want is to be here. I know you've got your audience there, but you've got to work it out how you block
Or if it
it.
was to be like a fall or something. So like the carer is going to come within eye vision, but they've fallen or something, and that's a shock to the person because they haven't seen them coming. Like
So say that.
so say if you were coming to say hello within my vision,
Yeah.
so I can see you and know that you're there,
Yeah.
and maybe something where. So you approach me slowly and make sure that I
Yeah,
can
see
see
it,
what
yeah.
if you were to fall.
Oh, I was to fall.
Yeah, and then that would shock.
God,
me.
yeah, wouldn't it? Oh,
Good question.
that is a
actually.
good question. I don't what. So if I'm coming towards
And it's
you,
suddenly like
and
process
then I
that
go,
degree. Yeah.
and suddenly I've
How
gone.
would they react to that? 'Cause obviously they've seen you, they know that you're talking to them with the hand and the mouth thing, but you've fallen. How would then that completely trigger it back to the first thing?
It could very well
Might just
do.
end up with a, are you alright love? You just
Or-
don't know, yeah,
or,
everybody's
you know,
different.
If you're shrink, again, if you're there, you're looking, oh yeah, I can
Hmm.
see you, and then suddenly you're out of my, and then I pop up again.
Yeah. Now that could trigger, definitely, yeah.
That
yeah.
could trigger, yeah.
Could be anything. Could be background noise, something
It-
going off, sirens going
Oh,
off.
Sirens.
Sirens can
Bigger
slip
than
people's
that.
ears because people's hearing is affected as well. So it's very sensitive to sound. Have you ever seen the lovely book film play the Dog in the Night Time?
Oh, the Curious Incident of the Dog. in the
Curious
Night.
Incident of the Dog. So I think it's autism. I mean, we've learned a lot from our learning difficulties and disabilities and autism. So the environment, you know, that wonderful scene where he goes to London on the and tries to find his way, and they kind of do all these extraordinary things with noise, don't they? And lights, and how frightening and disorientating that is. So maybe there's an element you could, for not too long, but this is what it feels like. The world is so noisy, there's too much sensory overload. Think of our prehistoric brain, we're not used to this. There's another good clip, Understanding Derek, which is, if you just Google that, Joseph Rowntree, it's a resource. Can't find it, I can send it to you. And these is little scenarios made by people with Downs. And they do a great little piece, sort of having dinner, lunchtime. So there's the television on, there's the clattering of the cutlery, the tablecloth is patterned, so he's trying to pick up the tablecloth. The other thing that happens with visual perceptions, if you do your goggles now, you can't see things closer to you, can you? I can see that, so that's yours, I've taken that. You get angry with me, because I've taken your drink.
So why do you show this? Is it
Because people's eyesight deteriorates to this kind of level. Really,
Imagine you've got all your peripheral vision,
Yeah.
haven't you?
we've all
Imagine it starts coming like that,
Start,
so
yeah.
you're not
so
sitting
it is
there.
because of brain?
brain damage, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Eventually you end up with what they call binocular vision.
Yeah, eventually you are like this. And it's probably sepia as well, we
Yeah,
think, don't we? It's
yeah.
not, no, it's a colour
It's
thing.
not like brownish or black and white movies kind of thing.
So again, physically you might be
There's
able to
an interesting
demonstrate
thing I
that.
watched actually, and it was there was like a room in like a bus, and it was made for people who aren't living with it to experience it.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
through,
The
yeah.
dementia bus. Yeah.
The dementia. Now we have our own session, but that's very expensive actually
Yes,
to
we
do
want
that.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, and there have been some. It's a bit challenging because some people have been left really traumatised.
It's, yeah, and I think the shoes thing as well. There's been a few
So
people
we-
had arches off it.
Yeah, we do a Through the Eyes workshop in the strategy, and we take that around to care homes in particular. But I mean, it could be
The Through the Eyes thing is brilliant. You lot would really appreciate that.
actually.
I
So
think.
maybe
Yeah,
that would. When
yeah.
is this? When are you doing this performance?
Christmas,
December.
December the, I don't know
wonder if there's time to do it through the eyes. It's an
The rate these
immersive.
guys work out, trust
To be
me.
fair, we want to work more on as well, like audience interaction. I
Yeah,
like the thought of them being able to experience it properly.
you've got to be a bit careful with that, I think, because it can be. Yeah, it's very powerful,
And it
and
could
this
be a
is.
tool we could use afterwards when they come and see us outside and say, you know, maybe they'll have experience.
Maybe
during
they
the
would-
play, yeah.
Yeah, could book the workshop or something. I think again, it's a short piece. You know, what are your 3 key messages, say, that you're getting across? I don't know what, but and how do you want to leave? What do you want your audience to leave knowing about dementia? You don't want them to be in pieces,
Yeah.
thinking, "Oh my God, this is
Yeah.
the most frightening thing ever." I think we always try to say we're trying to make. We can't make it. But there is no magic bullet in terms of drugs around the corner for this.
No matter what the independent would have.
No matter what you read every week in the Daily Mail, there isn't. Drugs will help. Medication will help. Some dementias, for some people, for some time. That's all we can say. So that's out of the equation. So it is scary, it is frightening for people. But the message we want to get across is, you know, we want to do everything we can to support people, to enable them to I think, just be part of the human race.
To live well.
I think the thing
And be
is
careful about the living well.
Yeah.
That's the Alzheimer's Society badge, and I certainly get, because not all people have been challenged. So Sarah
Yeah.
was challenged on a training. Someone just stood up and said, "How dare you tell me I'm living well with dementia? I'm not." So you can, but there are moments, you know, we can still engage the person. We can use the dance, we can use movement, we can use the arts, we can use all this, and think about the strengths of a person. They may not be able to do the chefing that they were, but actually, some people like there's something else they can do.
maybe put the water in the pots so we can put the carrots in there.
Exactly,
Yeah.
or another skill.
Yeah.
That
So
will
everything's
be
based on that, isn't it, really? It's always finding meaningful activity. with it,
finding
yeah.
something meaningful. That's the the psychology. If you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, creative self-expression is at the top of that pyramid. And we are creative beings. Creativity is innate in us. We wouldn't have got to be where we are now on this planet if we weren't. So maybe the kind of the upbeat end is that it'll always be possible to connect with the person in some way, don't
Yeah.
you think?
You'll never beat reminiscence therapy. That is the way to go for me. I mean, I've been to the Ergovic, that's what they use.
Oh yes,
It
yeah.
works an absolute treat. It encourages families to reminisce. When they start reminiscing with the person who's living with dementia as well, you tend to find there's almost this coming together, but the dementia's almost forgotten about for a while, which is a beautiful thing.
That's
you just
not
get
fair.
on with a sort of like a day-to-day living experience rather than focusing.
And very often it's moment-to-moment
Yeah.
living
Yeah.
experience, actually.
Yeah.
So has that given you somebody overwhelmed you all? So what? Ask us anything else?
Well, the kind of theme of the scene that we're talking about is separation anxiety.
Ah,
So a lot of the kind of gist of the split groups, because we've got split groups. So Chloe's got her small group, which has someone living with dementia, a carer, and then a kind of family carer. And then there's also another 2 groups. And we've kind of decided that each group might have a different kind of level of dementia or a different kind of...
that's a good, like you've already described the young onset, so someone who's trying to continue to live their life normally as much as possible. Then there's the separation anxiety. I think that's really key, isn't it? As well, it meets up with attachment, because I often see patients on the ward, particularly with lots of soft, cuddly toys. They carry, or handbags for ladies, more than one here, and that's your attachment object. Because actually, what does that mean? That gives me that sense of comfort and attachment, because I am separated from my family. from the things that are most meaningful to me. I am also separated in some way from myself. The first woman to have been diagnosed formally with Alzheimer's was a lady called Augustita. She was German, by a Dr. Alzheimer, as there was a Dr. Louis. And she came to his clinic in Germany in the early 1900s, and we have a picture of her, and she died very soon after that picture. You can't tell if she's a woman or a man, and I always ask people, how old do you think this person is? And they say, well, 80, 90, she was 55. So she died the year after, and I'm not sure if they still got her brain, but they've got her case notes. And for at least 10 years previously to that, she had started to show signs of erratic behaviour. However, when she came to Dr. Alzheimer's clinic, there's a really poignant, I think, moment, because particularly with the young onset, people have these insights into their condition, so it can be very fearful. And she's reported to have said, "Ich habe mich verloren," excuse my joke, which means I have lost myself. So she was aware that part of her was missing. So the separation anxiety, I think you could play with a lot of that, Augustita, those kind of things. How do we reassure people with separation anxiety? That can be that phrase, I want my mum, I want my mum, I want my mum. Because what did mum do? Comfort you, make it all better. It's why people hang on to soft toys, objects.
We get doll therapy from, in a way.
Where you get doll therapy from, it's another whole thing about doll therapy. Can work very well for both men and women, but what it does is give back that kind of nurturing, that sense of I've got something to do, there's an occupation. There's lots of pros and cons for doll therapy.
It's still a mixed bag, that one, isn't
Yeah.
it?
But I mean,
I think more so for the families than for the person.
yes,
I
it's
tend to
often
find,
the families who say, well, what's mum doing with that dolly? Or what's dad doing with that stuffed toy, you know?
I think it's infantilisation.
Yes. So infantilising is one of the things that we say, no, we're not infantilising. And I always make this distinction between childish and childlike. I think we all have that capacity to be joyful, to be childlike in our appreciation of the world. But it's the families who think you're just infantilising, which is a posh word for making fun of someone. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So I think we always need to get the families in and
Yeah.
on board with it from the
Yes,
beginning.
hugely.
Yeah.
So you could have a sort of, in one of your scenarios, you could have, if you've got a family care, a bit of a disagreement. I'm just thinking that with well, no, we don't be, precisely about that. Why are you giving mum this doll, or why are you giving mum this soft toy? They don't understand that, or they don't understand why they can't keep reminding mum that dad's dead. That would be helpful.
And like you say, it's grief. It's usually grief.
It's
It's coming out of them, they don't know where to go, and they've got events, so it comes at you.
Grief has a funny way of coming at people in all sorts of ways, because people do talk about, well, I've lost there's nothing left there. It's just a husk. And you will get families saying that, and that's why I always find the challenge for me is to say no. The person is different, and it's that as I said earlier, trying to find that moment of connection. The person is still there, and there's a lovely quotation from a wonderful woman called Christina Bryden, and she was diagnosed in the 1990s in Australia, and she's still alive. She's written another book, and the first one is she published in 2005 called Dancing with Dementia, and she has said something like, as we become less cognitive and more muddled, it's not what you say to us, it's how you say it. And then she said, please bear with us, be patient with us, try to find us, because we're still here in spirit and emotion, if only you could find us. So as a metaphor, I think that's very powerful. And someone else has written quite recently, chap again diagnosed with young onset, Keith Oliver, and he's written a book called The Alzheimer's Diaries. And it just hadn't occurred to me, I've been doing this professionally for some years, and he said, one thing I struggle with you, he addresses dementia, dear diary, So that might be another thing you could do, you know, dear diary, dear dementia. One thing I struggle with is how you define me. I will not be a sufferer. You do not call me a sufferer. And that's over, he says, it's over the language that you use. I will not be defined by you. I am still the me in dementia. And I hadn't realised.
Like that.
I am still the me in dementia. So maybe in your performance is a way of getting over the meanness of each person, the humanity of them. And you could even use it as a strap line. You know, I am still the me in dementia. And I thought I use this word all the time, dementia. I'd never seen the word me. I'd never seen
Could
it.
dementia be the demon in dementia? Maybe.
Well, and that's the trouble. As you know, the word dementia itself is not helpful.
No.
In America, they now call it neurocognitive disorder. Because what does it literally mean, the word dementia?
Demented.
Yeah, that's demented comes from that, and what does that mean? Crazy. So literally, day and comes from the Latin day, away or out of, mens your mind. So it literally means crazy. Is that a helpful term? No, it stigmatises, doesn't it? But so far, you know, neurocognitive disorder
It's a bit of a mouthful,
is
isn't
a
it?
bit of a mouthful. And in some languages, in some Chinese languages, in some Southeast East Asian languages, there is no word for dementia. So does that mean the condition doesn't exist in China? Of course it does.
They don't like that many. It exists in China. There's
Yeah,
a
it's
big problem with it. And that.
But it's interesting, and on training once, I had someone his family came from Africa, and again, in her language there was no word, and she said, well, we don't have dementia, but we've had it. It's just, you know, the word is just because you haven't got the word, and I think that also speaks to a kind of cultural difference, maybe, in terms of mental health. Because is dementia a mental health or physical health? What would you say?
Physical.
Only physical? Yeah, because if it's affecting the brain, so you will get physical disabilities, but also it's affecting your cognitive, your mental. So people's behaviour can change. People's the thinking, the processing. That can go. So I think it's a bit of both. Because it's like an acquired brain injury, you know, you can get both physical and mental. And in many places, even in this country, though, we've got a lot better in terms of mental health, but there is still a stigma associated with mental health. And dementia is now increasingly described as a hidden disability.
Yeah, they don't like classing it under mental health still, though, do
No.
they? No.
No. But so there's that, you know, paradox, I think, with it.
I think you could go as far as say it's also a communication disease as well, a bit like autism.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
you've got the issues with getting your point across and things like
So
that.
actually
There's a lot of
focusing
things,
with a performance piece, sort of focusing on communication, that would be great. Finding a way, you know, something that I want my voice to be heard. There's John Killock's work. John Killock, who's a poet and has worked in the field of dementia studies for a long, long time. As I said, that book, Playfulness and Dementia. But he gets people very powerfully to express their feelings through their own words, and then he represents it to them as a poem. So maybe you could get some, you're talking about verbatim piece, so you could look at words that people have said, like Keith Oliver's, you know, do not define me, and maybe represent that as a sculpt, as a I don't know, I'm just as a poem, something I think ending on something defiant.
Yeah, you will not own me, kind of.
Yeah, but with the song and maybe the mirror, I don't know, really
Once
like
a
that.
person managed it with always look on the bright side, like that was a crucifixion. So it can be done,
Yeah, always look at me.
Yeah.
May I ask you a question? You've mentioned that people whose family and relatives who have dementia.
Mhm.
So you have a special course for these people. So they come and they train how how to look after their relatives, right?
Oh, what
do you
would-
have any like materials maybe just to read?
Oh, I've got loads. Oh, it's just what you want to. You don't want to get overwhelmed by this. I think.
Yeah.
I always thought, I mean, from the frontal side, I always thought the chimp paradox was a good one. Was what I always
Oh,
always
okay.
enjoyed.
I'm not familiar with that.
So is it Steve Gibson, I think, if I remember rightly? That's about the fight, you know, about the amygdala kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
that central processing unit and whether you fight or flight. And yeah, I always thought that was a really good read when I did.
But it's what they've got
Yeah.
the time, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, we always say we're not neurologists by any means. Material. So,
Well, I mean,
What
like
do you want?
you recommend them to, as you mentioned, go with their story. Don't try to argue with them.
yeah.
Something like this. But,
All that,
but
yeah.
all together and very short, like a brochure maybe. Do you have something like brochure? Leaflet?
Yes, we've got tips and things. I haven't got any of those with me.
Like
I mean,
UCL Many Faces of Dementia
Yeah,
got some
but-
good case studies on it.
But
which
then
is-
that's quite a lot. That
It's quite,
that's a few hours of work. So what you want is the kind of things that we tell health and social care staff
You should be able
about.
to download some things
Some of
from
the
the
tips,
Alzheimer's
no?
Society
Yeah.
from their website. I'm sure you can either.
There's lots of
You can
yeah. I mean,
download
I
some
can
PDFs.
send
You got the stuff Teepa Snow does as well. That's what we.
Teepa Snow is very good.
Yeah.
She is an American OT, again working in this field for many, many years, and you can YouTube, Google her. Teepa is Teepa, Snow. There's a particular, I like that her 5 minutes, challenging behaviour. If you're going to watch one
Oh,
video,
superb that one. Yeah.
do that one. Challenging behaviour, and she's got a thing about de-escalating a crisis.
That's that one with the ambulance.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's really good.
So 2 things there. So this is a case of a little old lady. Again, people, because the motor switch in the brain isn't able to switch off, so people will persevere with a behaviour. 12 hours. So you can show that, you know, and it's no good saying, stop that, Gladys, stop it. I'm just going to do that. It's an unmet need I'm trying to communicate. And in this case, she shows that the lady wasn't quite as, but what she was doing, she had maracas because someone had done a music session, and she was going around the furniture. She'd been doing it for hours. So she said, what, okay, as a detective, what's going on behind that behaviour? She's annoying everyone, but she's not deliberately trying. She was a cleaner. She, in her mind, her brain has given her an object, and she's got to clean all the chairs around and around, hours on hours, cleaning the chairs. So how do you stop that behaviour? But
It's great how
it's
she
great.
does it. It's great. How
The
she
way
does
she,
it.
so I recommend, Teepa Snow, Google that, challenging behaviour, or watch that. And the de-escalating a crisis, I really like that, because that is stepping into someone's world. So this was a lady, from what I can remember, who was very frightened. They had to get her to hospital.
Yeah,
or
she needs,
didn't
was it
want
something like
to.
an ECG or something she had to go in
Yeah.
for or something like
Yeah.
that, but they had to take her in on a gurney, didn't
And
they?
she was resisting that. You will be amazed, the little frailest, oldest lady, who's like a little dot, can take 4 grown people, hospital staff, to get anywhere. So she was resisting, they had the paramedics, she was fighting them off. And what Teepa did, and because her amygdala was going, because it's danger, danger, danger. So actually Teepa took her side. She was shrieking and all this sort of thing. So Teepa sort of literally came alongside her and she said, "Get out, you lot! You just stop it!
Yeah.
Go away! Oh my God, aren't they awful?"
Yeah, because she was there to do a course with them as well, wasn't
Yeah.
she? Yeah.
So she said, "Stop!" You know, she took on, and she said, "Yes, they are. Thank God, I've got an ally
Yeah,
here,
absolutely.
someone who understands me, gets why I'm behaving." And then gradually she did calm down, and she went into the ambulance.
I was like the one with the guy with giving up his car keys as well.
And
That's
another
a really
one is
good one.
driving. But I think you got.
Yeah.
But it gives a sense of how you try to validate how the person is feeling. So focus on the feeling, that emotional response at that moment. You try to validate it. So when we talked earlier about reassurance, that's what it's about. And you forget about the facts. So focus on the feelings, not the facts. And if the person can somehow feel they've got a bit of control in the situation, because so much is taken away from them, can you give them back that sense of control or autonomy, control over their own life? I do want to go out today. You can't do that, you might fall over, but I've got to get out, Has that given you I've overwhelmed you now. Yeah?
Answered a lot of questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But see anything else, then do, if you want me to, we can come back and...
Definitely. I would say he wants to go. I know Reed is desperate to visit, so we'll have to get her down here.
I think by the time you next come, depending on how soon it is, will probably be have a skeleton of the whole thing.
Great, yeah.
That would be amazing.
That'd be good to see, yeah.
Which is on the last 2 bits, not really.
Yeah.